We live in a time when if you let someone steal from you, someone will. I came across this quote by Frank Abagnale the other day when I was thinking about the story you're going to hear. The story of a small property owner named Tasso from Lynn, Massachusetts. But theft is not always financial. In this case, Tasso was robbed of his dignity by the tenant who lived above him, while Tasso lived downstairs running his business as a dentist. Even though he kept the rent below market, and even though he treated the tenant with respect, when Tasso learned that his mother was diagnosed with dementia, and when he informed the tenant that he needed his apartment back to move in both of his parents so that he could take care of them, the tenant refused to leave, which forced Tasso to turn to the eviction process. And during that process, it was revealed that the tenant committed identity fraud using a series of fake names. Even though this is illegal, and even though it would result in the immediate termination of any lease, the eviction process only dragged on longer, lasting a total of 4 years. In the end, Tasso was denied the opportunity to be with his mother and to take care of her when she died. We'll hear from his attorney, Jordana Greenman, as well as news reporter Scott Van Voorhees, who edits the independent newspaper Contrarian Boston. Scott will join us a bit later in the conversation to present his own questions. We'll also hear from Tasso as to why he no longer wishes to be a housing provider and why he would rather keep his apartment empty than to take the risk of renting it out to anyone ever again. At a time when renters need housing badly in Massachusetts amid a housing shortage, how can we reverse this trend so that all the kind, conscientious owners don't get chased out of the business? Hello, everyone. My name is Amir Shahsavari. I'm the Vice President of the Small Property Owners Association, also known as SPOA, which welcomes you to episode 20 of SPOA Housing Policy Series. This is where we discuss property rights and all things real estate. I'm happy to welcome Ms. Jordana Greenman. Jordana is an attorney who represents small property owners. This also happens to be her seventh time on the program. It's great to have you back, Jordana.
It's great to be back. I've actually heard from a lot of people recently who've been watching your episodes, which is great.
Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. It's also my pleasure to introduce Mr. Tasso Athanasopoulos, who is a property owner from Lynn. He is a client of Jordana's, and he's going to tell us his story today. It's wonderful to have you, Tasso. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin by reminding you kindly to donate to the Small Property Owners Association. You can do this by going to spoa.com/join. That's www.spoa.com/join. It's our pleasure to defend your property rights, but we can't do it without your help. We do work hard to bring you this program, to bring you monthly newsletters, to testify on your behalf at state and citywide hearings defending against hostile policy proposals against property owners. We work extensively with our lobbying team to have meetings with elected officials in private as well to discuss our challenges and our concerns. But we also need help. We need volunteers to spread our message. We need financial support as well. And we can't keep going if we don't have help from our constituency and our supporters. A lot of people who are interested in supporting us, but who have not had a chance to do so yet. This is the time to do it. So please remember to donate at spoa.com/join. And if you'd like to volunteer, you can email us at askspoa@gmail.com. Tasso, I'll begin with you. I want to begin by congratulating you on a very lengthy and difficult eviction that took 4 years, involving a very difficult tenant. And to say that the situation was difficult is an understatement. But I'd like to begin by asking you how you first came across this person, why you decided to rent, and how did the story begin, and then what happened?
So initially, it is a two-family building that I have, And the first floor is my business. And then the second floor, I, in the past, lived there. And then I ended up purchasing another home, and this was going to be for me and my parents. And I decided to rent the upstairs unit. So what I did was I renovated the unit before I moved out. I repainted it. I did all the ceilings. I, redid the kitchen. I put in a new dishwasher. So everything was up to par. It was in great shape. And I wanted to rent it to somebody who would be quiet because there was a business downstairs. So I was looking for someone who was quiet and hopefully, someone who would take care of the apartment or the rental. So one of my patients was my realtor, and I asked her if she could find me a tenant. And this was it started in 2013. And it took a few months, and finally we did find a tenant. And I did meet up with my realtor and the tenant. We exchanged pleasantries, and then we went over the lease together with my realtor present. And then we went from there. So I had problems from the very beginning, though, because the in the lease, which was a tenancy at will, it specified that there would be no pets. So when she moved in, 1 week after she moved in, I went upstairs because she wanted me to take a look at something, and I saw the cat, and I said, well, there's no pets allowed. We agreed to that. And I verbally told her that when we met before signing the tenancy at will. And that's when she told me that she didn't consider the cat her pet. So that was one thing that started. And then when she did move in, she got into an argument with the movers. And the hutch that she had for the kitchen was on the front porch of the business for almost 2 weeks. So I told her, I said, you need to move that because this is a business. I can't have that outside. And she told me that they were trying to hustle her for payment. And that's when she said the phrase, you can't hustle a hustler. So,
Wow.
so that was one. And then she was a tenant of mine from 2013 until about 2021. So there were a few instances where, for example, in 2019, there was in the basement, there was a backup of sewage. And at that time, I had given her permission to use my washer and my dryer. Unfortunately, when the backup of sewage happened, it was into the washing machine. So it was, and I told her, I said, you can't use the washing machine anymore because if there's a backup of sewage, it can't be used. So she was fine with that. And that didn't come up again until we ended up going to court, which was one of the things that was used against me. Uh,
Wow.
yes. And then another thing that was used against me was when we did sign the tenancy at will, the receipt that was given to both me and to my tenant for the payment, the down payment of first month's rent and security deposit, that receipt was given to me by the realtor. And that's the receipt that I had. So according to the court, that wasn't an official receipt. So that was also used against me. And then I think there was a couple of more things, but the receipt. Oh yes, last month's rent. So my realtor told me about the last month's rent. She said, you just have to put it in the bank. and you don't have to give interest on it because it's only security deposit that you give interest on. So I did put it in the bank account. It was in a non-interest bearing bank account, and I was penalized for that as well.
That must have been incredibly frustrating. I mean, these are things that you did not intend to happen. These are, what we would call technicalities.
Correct. And I mean, I was very good to her.
Mhm.
She was there for the length of time that she occupied the unit, which was 10 years plus. I never raised her rent. So she wanted, at the end of the day, she would call my office downstairs. She would say, "Oh, when she would speak to the receptionist, she would say, tell the doctor I have the garbage." So I'd go upstairs and I'd take her garbage out. I would allow her to park in my driveway when there was snowstorms. I would clean her car. A couple of times I drove her to the credit union because she wanted to get money. And then one time, and this was only one time, I went grocery shopping for her because she wasn't able to go. So
Mhm.
it wasn't that I was bad to her.
Mhm.
Everything started when I asked her to move out. And this was in 2021. And when I did that, I said to her, I spoke to her personally. I went upstairs. I said, I need the unit for my mom and for my dad and for myself, because at that time my mother was diagnosed with dementia and she was slowly, it was getting worse. So, and I told her, I said, I will pay for you to move. I will pay for you to pack. And I have a realtor that you can work with and she can find you an apartment. So face to face, she told me, yes, no problem. I will move out by September
Mhm.
of 2021, I believe it was. And then she never did. And that's when everything started.
That's
Uh,
when the long process started. I thank you for that introduction. Jordana, let me turn to you. So, picking up from where Tasso left off, he needed the apartment for his ailing mother. The tenant, it sounds like, initially said she was going to go but did not go. So that started the eviction process. What happened next?
Unfortunately, Tasso did not have me as a lawyer initially. And so there was one case that somebody, I don't remember who, filed incorrectly by saying it was the Tasso Realty Trust rather than saying Anastasios Athanasopoulos as trustee of the Tasso Realty Trust. So then another lawyer came along and did that part correctly, but the tenant claimed a security deposit violation and then some minor thing like a washer dryer or some silly issue. And so he lost the first eviction. And at this point in time, the tenant was still operating under the name Lois Johnson. And I feel comfortable saying that because this is a public record. This is not something that's private. It's not held in my office under any confidentiality. It's something that anybody could look up. So this person that he still thought name was Lois Johnson, he was ordered to pay her and her attorneys. So when he paid her, I think that was where my case sort of starts because she sent the checks back. She endorsed them back to him. And the reason for this will come up later, which is that she's not Lois Johnson. So she could never accept the checks that he was ordered to pay her as a settlement because she's not that person. She doesn't have an account in that person's name. So when he contacted me, he brought this up, and there had also been a couple other things that happened. If I remember correctly, she tried to have a dish installed on the property, and there were very large electric bills being sent in the name Lois Johnson. But then a neighbor said something to Tasso like, "Hey, Celeste, such and such." And he's like, "Who's Celeste? I don't know who Celeste is." So what I did first was I filed a motion to vacate the judgment against him. And it was a few months later because you have 1 year. If new evidence comes to light or fraud or something like that, you can bring the new evidence to the court and ask for them to vacate the judgment. So I took that angle first. And the judge said something that probably isn't that surprising to people who've been through stuff in Massachusetts, but is a bit shocking in a human way. The judge said, "Look, I agree with you. This is fraud. That shouldn't happen. This legal organization shouldn't have put this woman on the stand and told you that her name was Lois Johnson. But you have a no cause case. So it's clear that a landlord tenant relationship was started and that he took money each month from this person, and that the defenses in this case are applicable to this person no matter what her name is. So we're not going to vacate it, denied. So then after I told him to be very specific and start collecting information as to us being able to prove that she lied about who she was, because he has a really great lease that's like a tenancy at will from Greater Boston from like 1997. It's like the older version of that tenancy at will document, which says in it that you can be evicted for lying on your application. So he started to collect other things like pictures of packages on the um, the front porch, which said "boom boom." That's what she was going through, boom boom, and um, and then other evidence. Just the it turned out upon investigation that the date of birth and the social security number also were not hers. They didn't apply to her. They applied to somebody completely separate who owns her own house elsewhere. And the Lynn Police Department was a little bit helpful. So we then served a cause notice to quit. And she tried to do the same thing, and she hired the same legal organization, which was the biggest mistake, because I said to them, isn't this a conflict of interest under the Massachusetts rules of professional responsibility for lawyers? You know that this person is now saying she's a new person, Celeste, but only 6 months ago, you put her on the stand in a court of law and told the court that her name is Lois Johnson. How can you, this legal organization, perpetuate this fraud? So they then withdrew. She no longer had a lawyer. And, she would just show up and do what she always does, which is like this whole song and dance about all of the things that now have nothing to do with the case. So she still wants to say that Tasso violated the security deposit. And you already heard that. That's already been addressed. There's already been compensation for that. So she wasn't able to bring those things up. And then there was one hearing that she missed. And she claimed that she didn't know because the lawyer didn't tell her. But it was evident from the record that not only did I mail it to her, I think Tasso might have stuck it to her door. Um, they mailed it to her. They let her know. So she was not able to get away with saying anything else. The court gave her like an extra, it was either 1 month or 2 months, and then she needed to be out, but there was still no progress. So she went in for a final stay. It was denied. And eventually, the movers came out. My last image is like, the image of her sitting on the porch looking very distraught. And this is also a woman who has no shame in, sending these awful text messages and emails and notes to Tasso, because if you can think about Tasso's name, Tasso, if you take off the T and the O, she would cut those out and put like signs up that said these things and put little emojis and memes. And this was not somebody who could have been not aware of her court date. She's very with it. She might be crazy, but she's very with it. She knew what was going on. She knew what she was doing. And it's pretty amazing that the court was allowing this and not even, um, not even considering, sanctioning these lawyers for perpetuating fraud. I was very distraught about that part of it.
Well, of course, you have a client who is being harassed and badgered by a professional renter who knows what she's doing, and she was intentionally manipulating the situation because she knew that she could, apparently. Or she knew that she could get away with it for a while and she was going to do it until she no longer could. But it is shocking to go back to your earlier point, which is really the crux of the case that makes this shall we say, more unique than other cases we've discussed in previous episodes when we talk about tenant identity fraud, because I am under the impression that even now, with an updated tenancy at will, if it's discovered that the tenant provided false information, that by itself is enough grounds to terminate the lease. But in spite of that criminal act, the judge said, "Oh well, so what?" essentially, or I think what he probably actually said was it was more of a technicality
Yes.
where he said that, this was not what the case was initially about, so now you have to start all over again and refile it under the fraud heading. And Jordana, I mean, just given how long it takes with these processes, I mean, how you had to start again, and how much additional time did that add?
It looks like I filed the case. Let me look. Oh, I keep forgetting. I can't look her up under Lois Johnson because she
Which
wasn't
which
Lois
I
Johnson anymore.
what about Boom Boom? Is Boom Boom listed there?
That's her nickname.
So,
Packages would come under Boom Boom. Packages would come under Celeste Dovero and also Celeste Cohen. And what tipped me off was the neighbors knew her name, her real name, because I had, like you said, one neighbor one time asked me, "How is Celeste doing?" And I said, "Who's Celeste?" And she told me, "Your tenant." I said, "That's not her name." I said, "Her name is Lois Johnson." She told me, "No, her name is Celeste."
Hmm.
And then I had her niece call me one time. Her family was in on it because her niece told me when she called my office, she spoke to me and she said, "I have a question for Celeste." And I said, "Who is Celeste?" And she told me, "Your tenant." I said, "No, her name is Lois." I said, "Why are you calling her Celeste?" And then she said, Celeste is her middle name. That's what she told me. So
Mhm.
she was in on it. They knew. Um, and the other thing was that this all started with the packages. And on Father's Day in 2023 was a Sunday. I remember driving to the practice, and that's when I saw the dish person there. And I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I just installed a dish." I said, "You work on Sundays?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What time did you get here?" He said, "Your tenant requested an 8 o'clock appointment." So she knew that I wouldn't be there Sunday mornings. And he had installed the dish on the balcony, on the floor of the balcony, so it won't be visible. And that's when, because I had, collected the different names that she had used, and I said to him on my cell phone, I showed him, I said, "What name did she use?" And then he said number four, which was Celeste, her real name, Celeste. Can I say it, the name?
yeah, it's public record.
She said Celeste Cohen. So I said, "Well, I didn't order her, I didn't allow her to put the dish up." And then she came to the window and she told him, the dish person, she said that I was not her tenant, that I was not her landlord, and that she told him, "Have him prove to you that he's my landlord. He's lying to you." And that's when I called the police. The police came and she barricaded her door. They were not allowed to go up. And that's when the police told me, "You have the right to remove the dish," which I had to hire another company to do because Dish Network would not do it. Dish Network would not do it. She was also, because she was committing fraud, she was using different names. I had somebody come with medication, I'm assuming, or something, knock on my door, uh, my office door, and she said, "I'm ringing the doorbell next door, but Mrs. Dovero is not answering." And I said to her, because I still didn't know what was going on, I said, "You have the wrong address. There's no Dovero here." She said to me, "The woman that lives upstairs, her name is Celeste Dovero." I said, "No, I am the landlord. Her name is Lois Johnson." She said no. So that's when I said, can I please take a picture of your of the file that she had? And I did. And that's when I saw all these names, Johnson, Doverow, and Cohen, that she was using. And that's when I went initially to the Marblehead Police Department. They told me that they couldn't do anything because it was in Lynn. And when I went to the Lynn Police Department, that's where the officer, thank God, that was there, looked into it, and then they discovered the fraud.
Mhm. Tasso, thank you for that. We are now joined by Mr. Scott Van Voorhees, who edits the independent newspaper Contrarian Boston. Scott ran late with his previous appointment, but it's great that you could make it, Scott. Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you, Mary. It's great to be here.
In my case, which appears to have been filed um, in February, we got our first hearing date for 3/11. Then you can see she filed her answer and garbage, as I would say, with her jury request. But she was, I mean, the one thing that was okay was she was paying. But the thing is that she was paying based on the price 13 years ago. So that's
Sure.
not great, but it's better than nothing. Um, then we had our conference, the lawyers were in and out of the case, and it looks like we had her out by August. Yes, August. Then we had her out by August. So that was 6 months, which was fairly short for the housing court. But if you look
Sure.
up, so what he didn't know and what he couldn't have known was that this person, the actual person, Celeste Cohen, had a history of eviction. But he
Oh,
couldn't have
well.
known that because when he received an application from her, her name was Lois Johnson. Yay. So this was the case that was apparently, I guess, filed incorrectly because it said Tassos Realty Trust instead of his name as trustee. So they got that thrown out on a technicality. Then this case that was started in February of 2022, that started and that went on, and there was a trial, and then they won. The tenant won in February of 2024. So I brought that motion to undo that, it looks like in October of 24. It was heard in November, it was denied, then we collected more evidence. So this has really been like a 4-year saga.
Yeah, huge amount of time, right? And it's such a to have your property tied up, and as you're saying, that you wanted to move your mother in who has dementia, and that's a huge amount of time when somebody's dealing with a medical. Sounds like you're dealing with a medical crisis, right? I mean,
It took 4 years and 3 months. And during that process, my mom passed away in 2023.
oh,
And what was
sorry
difficult,
to hear that. Hmm.
yeah, what was difficult though was I had gone because my mom at that time had moved. So, dealing with my mom's death and having to have the, attorneys call me and try to schedule court dates was very stressful and very
Sure.
difficult. And like I said, the entire process has just made me lose faith in the judicial system, and I just don't trust anyone anymore. I will never rent again. I'd rather have the unit empty rather than have to deal with anything like this again.
Right, and that's such a unfortunate situation, right? That you're in that case situation where you don't want to rent again, and of course, the city probably certainly could use more rental units, but it sounds like a lot of disincentives to put yourself out there, put your apartment out there.
Well,
Yeah,
she brought the city, the inspection officers from the city of Lynn to my establishment, telling them that I was a slumlord. So they came, they looked at the property upstairs, and they found that she had issues with the faucets. Now, I had that unit was everything was that I put in that unit was brand new when she got in there.
sure.
She would put kitty litter down the drain,
Oh my God.
and she would put plastic wrappings, and she would put matches. So she had clogged the drain a few times, and I had evidence of that. And I showed that to Lynn City Hall, the inspectors that came, and I ended up getting a letter from Lynn City Hall from the inspector's office telling me that if I did not correct the faucets, that they were going to fine me $500 a day
Oh my
and
God.
press criminal charges against me.
So yeah, I mean it sounds it's so clear an example maybe Jordan of a tenant or a professional tenant or somebody who knows how to rig the game the system that they can just kind of find different uh issues in the local health codes or tenancy laws to kind of drag things out or create problems or prevent them just to keep to prevent an eviction.
It's also, yeah, I mean, it's a combination of so many things because unfortunately Tasso also lost his mother during this time.
Yes.
And that is a big deal. So I don't have any family wealth. I don't know what it's like to have assets with my parents, things like that. So
Sure.
I personally, I can't really relate, but on, in general, like just that loss, even without property, is a huge deal. But
Right.
this particular property that was a relationship in his family with his parents,
Right.
that it had to be so negatively affected
Right.
by something when, again, here's another small landlord. What is he doing? Providing housing to
Sure.
people who otherwise cannot get it. Where can you find an apartment for, what was it, $1,300 a month?
Sure.
Where do you find that? You don't even find that in Fall River anymore.
I never
So
I never raised the rent in all the years she was there. It was $1,100 from the start. And
Sure.
whatever she wanted, I tried to do. I was, she would call me upstairs to do stuff for her. And when I told her that I wanted the unit for myself and my family, she told me that I was lying, and she told me to put my parents in an old folks home and call it a day. She
Oh my
said,
God.
"You're not going to come to the United States, and you know it. This eviction is a scam, that you're trying to get me out. Put your parents in an old folks home and call it a day."
Wow. That's so hurtful to hear and outrageous, right? That somebody would say something like that and just sort of like and be able to kind of tie everything up for years on end, which is in Jordana, this is you it sounds like you run into a bunch of these cases or a number of these cases of small landlords dealing with tenants that know the system and kind of professional tenants, I guess, almost, or
I think, yes, I think this might be my only fake name case, but I
yes.
don't necessarily know that, right?
Sure, you don't know. Yeah.
um, but it's just amazing that, like, she was involved in an eviction, and
And
I
she
ended up
also had
talking to the,
$18,000 in unpaid heating bills.
yeah.
So
Wow.
National Grid came for gas bills. National Grid came to my office 3 times in total. The first time they came with a police officer, and they wanted access to the basement, and I was clueless. And they said, "Oh, it's for your neighbor," which I thought next door. And then when we went downstairs to the basement, they put a lock on her on the gas meter. And I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "She hasn't paid her bill."
Oh,
At that
wow.
time, it was $13,000. And then it went up to $18,000. So, and the gas bill was under the name Lois Johnson, which was not her name.
Sure. Do we know what she was up to with the different names, or was it because she had an eviction and she was trying to like obscure that or hide
Yes,
that record?
I think
Yeah.
that's what it
yes.
was.
She had two. So,
Two evictions. Wow.
yeah, because I'm friendly with another one of the lawyers. So, right before she moved into Tasso's place, she was evicted from a place in Nahant.
Correct, because my patients know her from the car, because she also had run ins with the police in Nahant. Her car
Oof.
was confiscated. because of unpaid citations. I think Jordana was at $3,000 or $4,000.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's how I determined 100% for sure that she was not Lois Johnson, was because Tasso sent me the license plate for that vehicle. We had it looked up, and skip traced, and it
Sure.
turns out that it was not her. And then she was evicted from another place in Nahant in 2009.
Jordana, these other fake names that she used, is there any evidence that she stole those identities from other
Hmm.
people? For example, if Celeste Johnson was a fake name, we know that Boom Boom is likely not a real person, but could it be that Celeste Johnson was a real person or
So Lois Johnson is a real person. Unfortunately, what we think, and it's entirely speculation, we don't have any proof that Lois Johnson and Celeste Cohen at some point were in an intimate relationship. And then Celeste was evicted, and Lois, who owns her house, that, she probably asked her, "Can I use your identity?" And she said, "Sure." Like,
Hmm.
so I don't think that she was like, well, I mean, it's interesting because she did open up credit line. I mean, the bar for opening up your own electric account is fairly low,
Sure.
like National Grid and whatnot. I don't know if they take your social security
They
number.
do. They do take the social security number. So she must have given the social security number of the real Lois Johnson, who she said at one point, not to me, but it was hearsay that that Lois Johnson, the real Lois Johnson, allowed her to use her name. But when
Hmm.
the police officers in Maynard went to the real Lois Johnson's house, the real Lois Johnson refused to let them in. And she told the police officer that she is not surprised that Celeste Cohen would do something like this.
Hmm.
Jordana, I mean, thank you for that, Tasso. My question is, even if one person lets another person use their identity, question number one, is that not still illegal?
Sure.
Question number two, wouldn't both people or anyone colluding that way get in trouble?
I don't know enough about criminal law, but what I was given to understand from the police is that since Lois Johnson didn't want to pursue charges, they couldn't sort of sua sponte or on their own pursue
Yes.
her where there was no victim because the victim didn't care, I guess.
Right. They
Correct.
wouldn't press charges, and even if they weren't happy about it for whatever reason, they or maybe agreed to it at one point and just didn't want to say that, right? I mean, but
Well, the
yeah,
Lynn police
that
officer did call my tenant and spoke to her and confronted her on all these charges. And she told him, I didn't realize that it was a crime to have packages come to my house under different names. And then she hung up on him.
oh, interesting.
If
Um,
you look at I can just open from the file though, like
sure.
there was at some point she filed some document saying like she had permission and nobody cares,
Hmm.
but the court did not agree with that.
Oh, interesting.
She
So they did,
clearly
yeah.
defrauded him. We don't know. We can't go back to 2011 or whatever when she was filing. I mean, when she was applying for the apartment and decide what Tasso would have done if he had known her real name,
Yes.
because we don't know. But
Right.
in my view, at the very least, she would have shown up as having been evicted, even with like a basic um, search that real estate brokers do, because it would have shown a judgment, a fairly significant judgment against her twice
Sure.
in the courts. So it's just, but this woman has no shame.
Yes. What did she do for work? What did you know, Tasso? Or
She used to be a limo driver.
hmm. So she must have, you'd think, I mean, I don't know, was she doing it under the table or she would have had to have some sort of social security?
I don't know. The entire time that she was a tenant of mine, I only got paid in cash. And what
Oh,
cash, never check. And when
sure.
And when I did write two checks to her, returning the security deposit and then interest on it, she did not cash those checks because I wrote them to Lois Johnson. So in back of the
Ah,
check, she would endorse the check back to me. So that's what she
interesting.
did. And I
Okay.
never really had contact with her because I would hardly ever go upstairs. What she would do is she would text me or call that the rent was ready, and she would leave the rent outside the door in a little baggie.
Oh, so and I don't know, did you have tenants before this? I mean, this sounds pretty
I never had
unusual.
a tenant in my life. This was my first tenant, and it will be
Oh,
my last tenant.
yeah,
Let me ask, I'm sorry, let me just
yeah,
ask one question because you said that she was a limo driver. What identity was she using on her
sure,
driver's license? How was she getting away with that? Like during the process of bringing her on as a tenant, did you ever see her driver's license?
No, I never see the realtor that I hired was my patient. And I just assumed that she had done the background check, which she
sure,
did. And when she did the background check, it said that Social Security does not match the date of birth. That paper was given to me, but I did not look at that paper carefully. That was
hmm,
my fault, but I was also trusting. And it was only afterwards when I asked my realtor to come and testify in court on behalf of myself, she refused. And that's when I put two and two together and I thought, okay, she must have seen because she printed it out and gave it to me. She must have seen that there was a discrepancy with the Social Security and with the date of birth because the Social Security belonged to a woman in her 30s that lived in Weymouth, I think, or somewhere there. And
yes.
then the real Lois Johnson lived in Maynard, Mass. So,
It sounds like if you had to do it again, that would be a definite red flag now that you wouldn't overlook. It sounds like that kind of discrepancy or
but I was a tenant also before I became a homeowner,
sure,
and I was never asked for my ID, like a picture ID. I never remember asking for one. And people that I've talked to that own apartments and rentals, when they find out, and I asked them, I said, "Do you ask for a photo ID?" They said, "No."
yes,
Even when I go to court, I went to court as a juror. I was
sure,
never asked for a photo ID. I presented myself and I said, "My name is Tasso Athanasopoulos. I'm here." They said, "Okay, check." How do they know that I was Tasso Athanasopoulos? I could have
sure,
been somebody else. Even in court, they don't ask you that.
sure. Um, when she was how long she was a tenant for how long before everything kind of blew up? Was it the
She moved in October 2013, and then the
yes,
ordeal started in 2021.
sure. And what was anything odd about her as a tenant at that point, or you just didn't?
She was well, the car that she had, she the so her license plate was top les, and people that lived in
Hmm,
Nahant that were my patients knew the car. And
yes,
one of my patients also works for Nahant, and he has police officers that are friends of his, and he told me that she had numerous run-ins with police in Nahant because she would tailgate people. And that's why her driver's license was removed because of
sure.
the parking tickets, etc., which was close to 4 grand.
Wow.
And then when she would park the car on the street, if there was somebody parked in her quote unquote spot, she would like put her bumper up to their bumper or like bump them. And I had
Oh,
a couple of patients come in and tell me, that car has bumped my car. And
sure,
so that was, and she brought in a cat 1 week after she moved in. And I had specifically told her face to face before she moved in, no pets allowed.
sure.
Told me that she didn't consider the cat her pet.
Oh, okay. That's another definition.
Yeah. So it was, but the truth is the truth. Did she pay me rent? She
Sure.
paid me. She did. cash always. Was she quiet? Yes, she was quiet.
Sure.
But I was very good to her also, and I didn't want her to move out because I wanted to raise the rent or whatever. I wanted it for my family, and I
Sure.
explained that to her, and she knew that my mom was sick.
Yes.
She knew what my mom, because I was always driving back and forth, so she knew what I was going through, and that's when in 2021, when she went to the law firm that represented her, all this started, and it was a nightmare.
How did
So
she get a law? Now that's interesting. How did she get a law firm to take
it
her
was
case?
free. She didn't pay.
Is it legal services or
Yes.
Correct.
yeah? So
Yep.
yeah, why? So that's an issue. Like obviously they do some good work, right? But why would they? Why do they? Why would they take a case like that? That seems like just so sketchy, right? I mean, you would think any little investigation they would looking into it, they'd realize, look,
They
you're
didn't know that it was
perfectly within.
sketchy because they didn't know her real name either.
Yeah,
They knew her as Lois Johnson, and in all the documents with Jordana and with my previous two lawyers, she was known as Lois Johnson. It wasn't until I went to the police because something was not right. I'm like, am I getting all these packages? And I was putting two and two together. Another time,
sure.
she was telling a neighbor of mine that she was, a certain age, and I said to myself, why is she? Because I knew her date of birth from
Right.
the tenancy at will that
Didn't
she had
match
filled
up.
out. So she was making herself. I said, why is she making herself look older when that's not her date of birth?
Sure.
It wasn't until the dish person came that he told me that she was using another name. And that's when I went to the police, and that's where everything unfolded.
Sure.
Jordana, two questions. Question number one, it sounds like this person committed a host of illegal acts. So now that the housing part of it is done, the eviction is done, what would it take to pursue her to file criminal charges for everything she did? And question number two, is there anything that can be done to hold either the attorneys or the judge accountable for their malfeasance?
Hmm.
If Tasso wanted to file a complaint against them, he absolutely could.
Against the legal personnel or
Yes.
also against the tenant?
So where would
I,
he? Where
I
would
don't
he
think
file
she
it?
has anything.
I don't think so either. At this point, I'm not even going to bother. I was ordered to pay her $5,042, and what she did was because I can't write a check out to, I couldn't, I'm not going to give her cash, and the check was going to be to Lois Johnson. So what she did was she kept 5 months worth of rent. And then I was also ordered to pay her lawyer at the time requested $10,000 that he wanted to be paid. And then the judge said that I should pay 6,000, but I never paid it and I won't. And they can come after me if they want.
But
So this is the
considering,
legal services then, or the lawyer, the working to the legal services that said he
Right.
wanted.
But under the fraudulent name of Lois Johnson.
Yeah, seems like a real waste. I know they're a non-profit, right? And they probably get public support. Seems like a real waste of resources on a on somebody who's basically a con artist, right? I
And
mean,
what's
there's other
sad
people out there.
was, the
Yeah.
sad thing is, when we went to court, her lawyer said, yes, her birth name is Celeste Cohen, but for the purposes of this tenancy at will, she decided to use the name Lois Johnson. And that's when I realized, I said, okay, there is no justice. It doesn't exist.
on that
Right.
note, on that precise note, Jordana, given that the Callahans were thrown in prison for committing fraud, what would it take to get this person, whatever her real name was, in prison for the same reason?
I mean, that's something that I think a criminal lawyer would have to answer. Unfortunately, I really, um,
She's 84 years old.
yeah.
What I just
Oh, okay. She's really, yeah.
That's all. because I was afraid also of what she would be capable of in the future. People were telling me that if she gets disabled, I would have to, put in the apartment all these things that needed for people that had disabilities, or that I'd have to remodel the kitchen again. And I mean, I was hearing everything from different people. And because of what she was capable of, I just wanted her out of my life. That's all.
Of course you
I'm
did. Of
not
course
going to
you did.
pursue
Yeah.
charges. I'm not going to do anything. It's over. It's done with. Um,
Sure.
No, that's understood. That's understood. But generally speaking, based on what we've heard, hypothetically, another person in your shoes would have to consult with a criminal attorney if one were to go down that road. And Jordana, you were saying that to hold or to try to hold various legal personnel accountable, the property owner, I'm not saying Tasso is going to do that, but a person in Tasso's position
I mean,
would,
I think he should report the lawyer. I think that this is I think it's unbecoming of our profession.
Mhm.
Do you think he should report the lawyer
Oh
or the
yeah.
judge? How would
No,
you go
no,
to the
not the.
bar?
I don't think I mean, the judge actually followed the law. It was true that the the person who recorded, I mean, who started the first case started a no cause case.
and it was no cause because they asked me, has she paid her rent? I said yes. I mean, either with the minor things with the cat. The grounds that I wanted was because I
Sure.
wanted it for my own personal use.
Right. What about the lawyer? He's doing work for a nonprofit. That sounds improper to then go and demand payment separately from the landlord, right?
This
No,
was
they got
prior.
legal fees. They're not demanding. They're demanding legal fees for the first case. They
Yes.
won, and they were entitled to legal fees because they won.
So how does legal services, how do they decide which cases they're going to take? And do they just take everybody, or do they try to sort out some of these cases? It just seems like to spend years on something like that.
I think she fooled them also because I
She's
know
this poor elderly woman.
exactly.
Yeah,
And her lawyer would also drive her home after the court appearances.
sure. Right. So she had the good outward facade of this poor elderly woman. You think like at the very least, all those resources could put and find a way to I mean, she's got to live somewhere. How are you going to deal with this, right? So she's clearly got some issues there. But instead of putting you through the ringer, you're just trying to provide housing, and you were in a situation where you needed your mother to move into the apartment. Seems like a kind of a miscarriage of justice, as they would say, right?
Tasso, where was your mother staying and living until the end?
So after this started, because my mother deteriorated, I mean, my mother ended up going to Greece. So I
Oh
was
wow,
forth. And then when my mom passed away on March 17, 2023, we were still undergoing, at that time, the process of the eviction with my second lawyer. And that's where I was getting phone calls, and actually a phone call from her as well, complaining about something. And I yelled at her and I said, my mother just passed away. Please leave me alone.
yeah. So
So,
did she have to go? She went back to Greece. Was
correct.
that
Because
because she couldn't move
the,
in with you,
the
or
current house that I'm at is a two family. So that's why I wanted I'm sorry, it's a two-story. So my
sure,
mom's mobility was limited. She couldn't walk. So
yeah,
that's why I wanted her to be on one level and it would be upstairs. And that way I would be downstairs for the day, but there's two bedrooms upstairs, the facility that was rented. So I was going to use that. And then my dad did come afterwards. My tenant also had an altercation with my father, uh,
oh
where she slammed the door in my dad's hand. And then in exchange, both her and my dad exchanged, words, if I can call it.
sure, of course,
And after that, she said that I was a female abuser and that I learned it from my father, he himself was a female abuser, and that I was a very difficult landlord because she talked to my realtor, Carol, and Carol told her, I'm telling you, you're going to have an issue with him when you move in. That's what apparently my realtor told the tenant. And this is, from my tenant's mouth, who I trust nothing that comes out of this
Sure.
mouth.
Yeah, no, she doesn't know anything about you. So that's yeah. She's just spinning stories, I guess. It sounds like.
Correct. Yeah. Uh,
Given the,
she
sorry.
knows how to manipulate people because she would have a few people come and drive her. And one of the people that she had, this gentleman was, I would probably say in his late 30s. He was, outside on the front porch. And when I saw him, I opened up my office door and I said, can I help you? And he said, oh, I'm waiting for the lady that lives upstairs. And I said, how do you know her? And he said, oh, I met her through church.
Sure,
So she would go to different places and she would befriend people and then they would drive her around. For
sure.
a while, she had this elderly couple that would come pick her up, drive her, bring her back. And this lasted for a couple of months. After that, I never saw them again. So
Yes,
I assume that once they find out who she is, they
right.
ties because she did that with the neighbors.
Mhm.
The neighbors know her as well. And when her car was, when she had to move her car, she moved it to the neighbor that's right next to me, and they were not able to get her car out after. They went through an ordeal to try to have her move her car.
I appreciate taking the time and sharing your story. It sounds difficult, that's for sure. And it sounds like what, as you said, you're not planning on renting anymore, that this is it. It sounds unfortunate the way things turned out there, that's for sure.
Also, a
Um,
great loss for all the tenants out there who need good,
Good
conscientious,
landlords, yeah.
kind landlords. This is the consequence of not only bad policy, but bad policy proposals in combination, combined with these negative experiences that drive good people out of the business. And so we have a lot of work to do to affect change for the better. And so, Tasso, I thank you again for coming on. I wish you all the best, and don't stop being the great person you are. Folks, I just wanted to clarify one thing about the advice Tasso got from his broker about the last month rent deposit. There is a difference between the way last month rent deposits can be handled versus security deposits. It's true that with a last month rent deposit, there are not many restrictions. In fact, it's very lenient. You do not have to put that deposit into a separate interest-bearing account. You can put it in any account as long as you put it in the bank. But what you should do is pay interest to the tenant on the last month rent deposit every year. The interest is marginal. It depends on how much the deposit is and what the rate is at the bank. But typically, the annual interest that accrues could be 50 cents, 75 cents, maybe a dollar. Often, it's not even enough to buy a cup of coffee with. And because the amount is so marginal, tenants and owners don't even think about it. But when an eviction process happens and when it gets started, it could become an issue. So definitely consult with an attorney about how to properly handle a last month rent deposit versus a security deposit. And in addition, if you have any eviction stories that you want to share with us, feel free to email us at askspoa@gmail.com. Again, the address is askspoa@gmail.com. Pretty soon we'll be back with another episode. Until then, I wish all of you well. Thank you.